The first rule of investment, Jeremy, as you know, don't lose money. The second rule of investment is revert to rule number one.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest, Shelon Hutchinson. Shelon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to chopping it up with you. Shelon is a master gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps and has successfully executed over $2.4 million in single-family real estate transactions. He's also participated in over $130 million in multifamily property acquisitions, totaling 1,000 units in the Southeast as a passive and an active investor. Shelon, I probably didn't do your background complete due diligence here, but would love for you to explain to our listening audience a little bit more about you, your background, what you're focused on today, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely, man. How much time we got?
Right.
Right. So, to make it short, born and raised in Jamaica, as we was talking about, right? I grew up on what used to be a coffee slave plantation. If you can picture a young man, walking up and down the hills to school bare feet, cut off shorts and bare feet, and with a little book. Matter of fact, I don't think I'll share this with anyone, Jeremy, because when I was in, I want to say first, second, and third grade, we only have half the book. So it's called an exercise book. We don't get a full book. It was cut in half. The pencil was cut in half, so you don't lose the thing, right? So, born and raised in Jamaica. I like to say I grew up wealthy but broke because we have all the natural resources that we needed to survive in that small community. We had family around. We had a very large family. And we had a river that ran through the plantation, and we have all mature fruit trees that provide us all the basic necessities that we needed. But however, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had everything we needed to survive. So migrated to America in 1998, and little did I know I was going to be able to fulfill that dream that I had in the third grade, and which is to join the United States military. See, when I was in the third grade, I read what's called the Children's Zone, which was mandatory reading for school-age children. And in that edition, we had a hometown news of a Jamaican that was working aboard a ship. It was in the United States military. And at that point, Jeremy, in the third grade, I made a decision: if I ever make it to America without having any understanding or plan of how that's going to happen, if I ever make it to America, I wanted to join the military and I wanted to work on aircraft. And I'm telling you, that happened. So did that for about 18 years. And as it became closer towards my 20 year when I could retire, I realized that I needed to do something else. However, I didn't just want to do the common path of just getting out to get a DOD job, contracting job. I wanted something that I was equally passionate about, just like I was about the Marine Corps, and real estate did that for me. So in 2018, I started a business for doing real estate, flipping property with a goal of transition into multifamily syndication.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing that background. So you made this transition, as I understand it, from being born and raised in a coffee plantation in Jamaica to then eventually making that transition into the Marine Corps and then real estate investing. So how did your kind of maybe experience growing up in Jamaica and the experience you have working in the Marine Corps? How did that really shape your approach to building a real estate portfolio or really making that transition?
So one of the things that, and I share this with some people, you know how sometimes your small community, they restrict your growth, right? Fortunately for me, I didn't have any restrictions. So most part of my life, I didn't know what failure looked like. You know what I mean? So I knew I could try these things. And if I tried, I'm going to do real hard, just by just like the dream that I had in at the third grade that I want to go to America and join the military, and all these stuff start happening. I develop I develop a bias towards action to make things happen, right? And then the stick to itiveness to see things through. And I think a lot of the resilience that I had as a child, man, of just being resourceful, of getting things done, a lot of those things paid off significantly in the military, right? And not worrying or stressing or complaining about things, just do things, and it worked out.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. I know that you're, also, really engaged on the investor side, both as an active investor in real estate as well as on the passive side. So how did, the discipline, the resourcefulness, the leadership, teamwork, how did those lessons that you learned in the military, really influence your success as now an investor?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really understanding the team and a part of the team in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, we have what's called military occupational skills. We call them MOS. And if you think about an aircraft, on the aircraft, there's an individual fixing a tire, there's an individual fixing an engine, there's an individual fixing a prop, the electronic, the lights, the life rafts, the life support system, all these things, right? And that is exactly what I see in real estate, the who, not how concept, where if everyone do their part, this aircraft will fly, just like executing that business plan. And as long as we align ourselves with the right team, unfortunately for us in the Marine Corps, we don't get to choose the team we have. However, it's our responsibility to train the team we have, right? And that requires a level of leadership. So, with myself coming into the real estate syndication space, understanding who the leader is and who is doing what and how I fit into that equation as far as an investor, active or passive, depends on what's going on with that transaction, right? It helps me to understand is who, not how, and who is the leader, and do I understand the vision? I need to be a good follower, right, in my own, and also be a good leader whenever it's time for me to be the leader. So understanding that from a leadership perspective, help us to be a part of a solid team and choosing the right teams as well too.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me, and I can see how that can be tremendously, powerful. I know that you're also or have been involved in kind of what I would call the gateway drug to multifamily, and that is single family, right? I know you spent some time, and maybe you still are, early on in your real estate investing journey, focused on single family, real estate transactions. Really, how did that experience in the single family space, really help you to scale, now to the multifamily investing side?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really do value, right, is, and we're mandated in the Marine Corps to have mentors. So there are so many customs and traditions that we follow in the military, and a lot of the things that we're doing, we are just following the clues that have been left behind by those people who have gone on before us, whether they paid the ultimate sacrifice or they serve a long career and created certain processes in place, right? So in 2018, when I decided to, to go into real estate as a business, I started out with the Fortune Builders guys. And what they did, they had a 3-day conference that it came down to Hawaii, came down to Pensacola, Florida. And what they did, they taught us how to go from wholesaling to wholesaling to fix and flip with the goal of buying a small multifamily and then level up to a large multifamily properties, right? So they gave us a peek behind the curtain of what was possible. And I was like, I want to do that, right? So we started flipping properties down in Pensacola with the goal of getting into multifamily space. And we spent about 14 months flipping this amazing property. We turned a 3 bedrooms, 2 baths into a 4 bedroom, 3 bath, rerouting wires, rerouting plumbing, rerouting kitchens and bathrooms. And we did a lot of things, right? To build that experience with the goal of maximizing the highest and best use of that property. And then after the 14 months, my wife and I, we sat down, and in the military, we do what's called an after action report. So my wife and I, and Athena, we sat down to do an after action report to talk about, what we did right and how can we duplicate this thing, what is repeatable and what is sustainable. And we came to the conclusion that, the direction that we want to go in the multifamily space, we are there, and that's the direction we need to go. It took us 14 months to do this amazing project, and that could have been a 14 unit that we could have flipped in that 14 months. So we made a decision that in 2019 we are going to transition to the multifamily space, and we're going to syndicate or co-sponsor 100 units, which was a big, hairy, audacious goal for us, man. Because especially going from single units to 100 units, like what are we thinking? So in 2019, we were able to be a co-sponsor in 55 units, and we have not slowed down since then. Since then, we have done one project every year, and it's progressively get better. Last year, we did a project totaling 666 units across three projects, a portfolio in Texas, with one of our preferred partner, and we're looking to scale that even bigger.
That's great. Really appreciate that, Hutch. And listen, and I apologize for having got 10 minutes into our conversation here without saying thank you for your service to our country as well.
Appreciate the support, brother.
Of course. And I really love your story, of, really, learning and getting educated, really taking action, making a decision, betting on yourself, right? Really further learning the business and then ultimately, scaling, the company and the business. But, really my question for you is what type of advice, would you give to others that are looking to make a move from, single family to multifamily real estate investments?
Yeah, and here's the thing: what we do in multifamily requires a lot of money, right? And I think a lot of us, we don't have a good relationship with money, and a lot of times it's not our fault, because a lot of the things that we know our paradigm for the most part is created by sometimes a small community, or school, and parents. Money doesn't grow in tree, and some of these concepts, right? So we develop a relationship that with money that is not good, towards a lot of the things that we can accomplish. So we think this thing is really, really hard. So for a young person that's wanting to transition from single family to multifamily, like, look, there's so many people in this great economy we call America, or experiment that we call America. There's so many people with money that has latent potential, and they might not know it. So it could be their now money in their savings account that is actually a depreciating in value, or it could be folks with their later money, just sitting there in a Roth IRA, not working as hard as people has worked for it. So if you're in single family home, what we're typically doing, we're trying to own an entire grape. And what I found, Jeremy, is that if we shift from owning an entire grape to slices of watermelon, in the future we end up owning one big ass watermelon, right? And that is such a juicy thing to deal with. And if we choose the time, take the time to develop relationship with those folks who have the enough money that's not working as hard, or the later money who's also may not be working as hard, and maybe and have a lot of latent potential, then we can fuse that together. And because we have the experience in what it takes to take a property to the highest and best use, and we have take time to develop these relationships with these people in our small circle, right? Until we start building a bigger circle, right? Build those relationships and figure out how to add value to those people by using their now money or later money to create a lot more value, and then we can level up. You know what I mean? So just start talking, man. And the biggest thing I'll tell people in the single family space: tell people about your dreams and aspiration, right? Tell people, and the more you share it, you'll be surprised how the world, the environment, God, all these things conform to the vision that you have for your future. So think big, take action, and share your dreams and aspiration with people.
Yeah, so powerful. And the cliche, saying goes, your network is your net worth, right? And sometimes, yeah, and sometimes, in all honesty, sometimes it just means we have to be willing to put ourselves out there, right? Sometimes it just means we have to be willing to pick up the phone or, post that content on social media that we may not be comfortable, with, et cetera, et cetera. So and I'd like to maybe I don't know how many service members that we have that listen to this podcast, but speaking about veterans, how can, and I know that you do some things in terms of leveraging VA loans. So how can maybe service members use VA loans to kickstart their real estate portfolios?
Now, this is a catalyst for us as veterans, and this is exactly how I started out. Right. So my first property that I purchased, it was a condo. And even though I at the time did not fully grasp what a condo was, right? Couldn't tell you how to differentiate an apartment from a condo. Now I can, right? But back in the days when I bought my first condo, the first condo, here's how that happened. Um, I bought a condo for $161,000 here in Hawaii back in 2005, and I had a wife, a young child at that time, and my wife is from Hawaii. I was deploying about a month later. By the time in the proximity that we found the house, closed on it, I was deploying about a month later. So Athena didn't want to live into a new house, a new community, and all the good stuff. So she went home and lived with her mom on a neighboring island until I returned from deployment. So we put a resident in the house. Went and cleaned it. We changed a closet door. We cleaned the dirty shower because it was pretty bad, right? And we give this place a nice look. And I think we spent maybe a total of maybe $500 on the property, right? Changing doors and cleaning things, right? And I bought it for 161. I went on deployment, put a resident in the house, went on deployments. And by the time I came back, Athena had sold that property for over $230,000, right? In less than 6 months. So right then and there, I got the bug. And that was a VA loan. So I had little to no money in the deal. And I was able to make, tens of thousands of dollars in a very short period. So like, man, this thing actually works. So over the years, we bought some properties to the point where I bought a really nice sized property in California, and it has doubled in value in less than 6 years, and that was amazing things, right? And we were able to leverage that equity from that property and roll a lot of money over into real estate syndication, and now we have a resident that is paying our mortgage, and we have a lot of money working in real estate syndication that is providing us really good cash flow. So I'll say that if you're leveraging a VA loan, most of us we see this as buying a house or a home. However, I think as a veteran, you have to look at every single piece of real estate as an investment, property, because these loans they're backed by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and it provides us some really favorable terms. Whether it be some competitive interest rates or just the biggest part of it is just no money down out of pocket. So look at every single piece of real estate as an investment property and make sure that you use that as a catalyst towards taking your family on a financial trajectory that a lot of us don't never dream or was taught was possible.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, with our listening audience. I think the main takeaway here is there are creative ways, in which people can acquire, real estate without, traditional dry powder, so to speak.
I'm Zach Happenstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, you can go to our website and set up a call with our team.
I also know that you are also working with potential investors and existing investors on placing them or placing their capital, with other operators in the multifamily space. One of which you learned, that space through your membership with Raise Masters. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about, what type of value, you found in partnering, with Hunter Thompson's Raise Master Group, and how has that helped you, as a capital raiser in the space, grow and scale your business?
Yes. So I think one of the biggest value, Jeremy, with that environment is these folks are not existing, whether it be in a space as far as performance or mindset. They're not existing in a mediocre mindset or a mediocre performance, right? So being able to be a part of such a large group of, I like to say, top performers, it really is a catalyst towards the quality of people, the quality of people we're around, and the quality of business that they are creating, whether they're creating business as a capital raiser or they're actually operating. So as you know, Hunter Thompson focused mostly on teaching people how to create the lead and how to nurture those relationships and creating value for them by placing their, whether it be their now money or their later money, in with good operators, or we like to call them best in class operator. If we, like your case, Rice 48, and a couple others out there that are really making some waves in the real estate sector by consistent performance, by with their quality of deals that they bring to investors, and also the way they operate the deal. Right, Rice 48 is definitely one of our preferred partners to work with because of the quality of deals and their business strategy, and also their vertically integrated system. So these are the type of people that Hunter Thompson brings together. Because look, when you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for your education, it makes you pay attention and it makes you take action. Right? They said those who pays pay attention. So it's really good to be in that environment.
Makes total sense to me, Hutch. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's really important for people to understand, that it's there's power in relationships, but when it comes to placing capital, it really comes down to that jockey that's riding the horse, the pilot that's flying the plane, so to speak. But my question for you is, I want to speak specifically to that brand new investor, that investor that's maybe never invested in a passive real estate syndication before. What would be maybe two or three different pieces of advice that you'd give that individual before they decide to send their wire transfer over to the operator?
No, so look, and it's cool that you asked this question, right? Because we put together a the definitive guide to due diligence for a passive real estate investor. And what this ebook does, it gives them a question. Then they also provide a little bit of guidance, and beyond that, it tells them why this information is important to them. For example, asking an operator question about the operational expertise. The question, simple question is, you know, can you provide an example of a successful multifamily, right, property that's similar to this property that you're bringing to us, right? And the reason why this is important is that past success of an operator and the challenges, provide a valuable insight, to an operator's ability to actually handle the complexity that is inherent with operating the multifamily properties, right? Another one is just understanding the investment philosophy. Simple question as, how does your investment philosophy align with the goals of the passive investor? For example, Jeremy, the first indication that we did was a 55 unit in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And as we got closer to closing the property, the way we structured the returns was an 80-20 split, right? And as we got closer to closing on the property, the bank said, well, we cannot give you all the proceeds that we said was going to give you up front. So we had a couple of options. We can give the investors back their money, or we go back to the investors and say, we need to raise more money for you, which will dilute their projected return, right? So what we did, instead of diluting the investor return, we went from an 80-20 to a 90-10 split, which still give the investors the projected return of what they would have received when they initially make their investment. So we're listening for things like these. Investors need to look for things like this, to where the operators philosophy, right, is more so creating win-win situation where they enter into no transaction where everyone doesn't benefit. So you need to benefit the seller, you need to benefit us, the buyer, and also need to benefit our investor. So win-win-win situation. So talk through that and some of the challenges that have come with those. So little things like those, understanding the operator, because look, we are in this relationship for the long term, right? And an operator's ability to manage risk, which is another question, is what proactive risk management practices does the team employ to mitigate potential risk associated with multifamily? So these are things that they can ask. And the reason why they want to ask that is because, understanding our operators, safeguard their capital, right? The first rule of investment, Jeremy, as you know, don't lose money. The second rule of investment is revert to rule number one. And we know there's some uncontrollables, taxes and insurance, and a couple other things that these operators need to ensure that they have in place, right, to be able to maximize the performance of the property, but also prevent or mitigate losing the capital of the investors. So we have put together this guide, and anyone that reach out, they can get it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate, your perspective there, Hutch. It makes a lot of sense. And, you're exactly right. I mean, it really all comes down to the sponsors, brand equity. We build up that brand equity one drop at a time. We lose it in bucketfuls. So if the sponsors, treating their investors like they're merely transactions, probably is not going to go real well for them, over the long term. So, I love your perspective on, operators that keep and truly keep, their investors, first. The track record is incredibly important, but it doesn't always tell the whole story either. And the reason why I mention that is because there's also this track record that's unrealized. Okay. We know what the realized track record is because there's deals maybe that have gone full cycle. But what we don't know is we don't know about transactions that have yet to be, disposed of, right? So the question really comes down to, let's talk about, for example, let's talk about, a time that the industry has experienced, some severe, headwinds, which came as a direct result of, the historic run up in interest rates in 2021 and 2022, right? So maybe let's drill down on some of those deals that have yet to go full cycle, to find out, how, those sponsors are truly, we'll call it the fiduciary responsibility that they have to protect and preserve, the investors' capital, and what decisions have they made to truly put, their investors first, even though they're experiencing, some economic headwinds on those deals. So appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, it's really important, right? Those are solid questions, and it's those best in class operators though tend to divulge those information a lot of time without being asked because that is true transparency, right? One of the operators that we invest with, we on a monthly basis, whenever we push the investor portal and also the link for the investors to view all the ledger, they get to see everything, all transaction from the property. Additionally, this best in class operator for the properties that are still performing, they do investor calls, right? They hop on a Zoom call with webinars with some of the investors and said, this property is performing as projected. This property is not performing as projected. And here's what we're doing to ensure that. And here's what caused that. And here's what we're doing to rectify that, right? And I find that those operators who are very transparent develop more trust with the investors. And that deal could break even over the next couple of years. And those investors would have developed so much trust that they will reinvest that capital with that operator because of their understanding of what transpired. Because look, when Bitcoin goes down, none of us have control of that, and none of us can really get an explanation of what happened, right? When Tesla stock drops, several percent, none of us really get a good explanation or have an impact of how that can rebound. But what we do in this space with good transparency, then we get to have a direct relationship with those decision makers that is managing the action on the ground, right? And when operators are transparent, then it definitely helps to develop a significant level of trust with our investors.
Yeah, and I so appreciate you highlighting, that transparency piece. And, when you're investing with operators that are willing to provide you as an investor with access to the very same information that they're required to provide to the senior lender, right? Who is arguably the largest investor in most real estate syndications, right? The bank. Okay. So if you're partnered with an operator who's willing to provide you with full access to, the financials, the bank statements, the general ledger, right? Those types of things. That's probably an operator, that is willing to be fully transparent with their investors, and more than likely an operator that I would feel personally more comfortable, deploying my own capital into. So Hutch, as we kind of, think about, moving through, 2025 and beyond, do you have any specific personal goals or bucket list items that you'd like to check off?
Yeah, the go for what I got two big ones, and it includes $20 million, right? So in Hawaii, transaction is slowly picking up as far as single family real estate transaction goes, right? And there's a lot of folks always moving in and out of Hawaii. So, good military, all the good stuff, right? So the goal is to do some more transaction as a real estate agent here, right? And then, of course, raise $10 million for 2025 from passive investors. And we're looking at a couple of different things, right? So right now, my virtual assistants and I, we are maximizing our reach on LinkedIn by doing some DM outreach and also posting daily, sometimes twice a day on LinkedIn to ensure we can continue to build those connection of professionals, especially people who live in here in Hawaii, so we can go have a coffee together, right? So we're maximizing that. We are scaling the podcast to reach more people, right? However, a couple of things that we're working on. Some of our best-in-class partners is really effective with doing 1031 exchange, right? So as a real estate investor and a real estate agent here in Hawaii, that's something that we're looking to help real estate investors do is to leverage that 1031 exchange capital into income producing assets on the mainland. Reason being is that Hawaii is a high appreciation state. However, when you start thinking about cash flow, if a real estate investor is focused on building cash flow by doing a 1031 exchange, then they might want to consider investing on the mainland. So through our strategic relationship with our strategic partners and good operators, we are looking to assist them with doing a lot more 1031 exchange on the mainland by purchasing alongside a syndication via the tenant in common concept, right? Cash flow in multifamily properties as compared to a appreciation play. So that's what we're focusing on doing right now. And our target audience, Jeremy, with the relationship we're building on LinkedIn, are military veterans that are accredited investors who own a small business, right? So we're building that on LinkedIn, and we also develop a relationship on the ground in Hawaii with folks who are aspiring to do 1031 exchange for cash flow or income producing assets.
That's great, Hutch. Well, I really appreciate the tremendous amount of value, that you brought our listening audience today. Would love for you to share maybe one or two different ways that our listeners can connect with you to engage and learn more about what you're up to.
Yes, sir. I think there's two ways. If you go to hsquaredcapital.com and download the operations manual, of course, going to ask for your name and email address, and then we start nurturing. We call it lead nurturing, which I'll send you some information that teach you a little bit more about our team and also some of the things that we're committed to. And from there, we'll possibly get on call later on to solidify a relationship. So if we get a 506B, right, which we need to have a pre-existing relationship, we already have that before the deal comes to fruition. So let's start building a relationship by going to hsquaredcapital.com and downloading your operations manual, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have gone from Hutch, the marine investor, to Shelon Hutchinson. So you search Shelon, that's SHELON, Hutchinson, and we can connect that way. We can start building a relationship.
That's great. Well, I'll definitely put those links in the show notes for this episode today. Again, Hutch, really appreciate you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, brother.
Absolutely. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.